Good afternoon and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. We're excited to have over 300 registered attendees for today's webinar, which is eligible for 1 credit from the ACI. Let's get started by giving one lucky attendee a Technation Tour t-shirt for answering today's trivia question. PartsSource, our sponsor today, is headquartered in Ohio. What is the name of the Ohio-born movie director that has Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park, and Jaws credited to his name? You can answer now using the questions feature on your dashboard. While you're answering, I want to remind everyone to mark your calendars for our Fall MD Expo, which will be held in Orlando October 5 through 7. To receive more information about this and other MD Expos, including the education lineup, schedule, special events, and our newsletter, you can visit mdexposhow.com/Orlando. All right, and the winner of the Technation Tour t-shirt today is Paul Graham. Congratulations, Paul. The correct answer was Steven Spielberg. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, PartsSource. PartsSource is the industry's leading provider of biomedical and imaging replacement parts through comprehensive technology tools. As a single source for parts procurement, their top priority is delivering outstanding service to clinical engineering facilities and supply chain departments. Visit PartsSource.com for more information. Our presenters today are John Bowser, Manager at OhioHealth, and Erin Tournoux, Vice President of Client Services at PartsSource. Erin, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Great, thanks, Jamie. Just to start, I just wanted to introduce myself again. I'm Erin Tournoux. I'm Vice President of Client Services at PartsSource. Been with PartsSource for about 8 years, in the industry for about 13 years. And I currently run our implementation team at PartsSource as well as our biomedical business unit. And John, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, this is John Bowser. I am Imaging Engineering Manager for OhioHealth. I've been with OhioHealth for 18 years, the last 5 years as Manager for Imaging Engineering. Before that was engineer for 12 plus years before that with OhioHealth in-house, and prior to that 13 years with Siemens Medical in the Ohio region. So that's my background.
Perfect. Thanks, John.
Sure.
So to start, again, the topic today is, some of the pain points that occur when you're managing multiple suppliers, and wanted to take you through the agenda to start. So first, we're going to lay out kind of the landscape of some of the key pain points in managing multiple suppliers. Secondly, John will be sharing OhioHealth's experience in managing multiple vendors, some of the pain points they've experienced personally. Third, we've got some data that we want to share with the group, data from our clients, data from our internal database with the 16 years of purchasing activity that we have, just to give you some examples on the impact on healthcare organizations. And then, of course, some areas of improvement to improve outcomes through supplier consolidation. So to start, I wanted to lay out, this is based on data that we've collected from multiple customers, but lay out some data on really to outline what the overall issue is. So if we look at the number of suppliers that are managed by healthcare organizations today, it's overwhelming the number of suppliers that our customers and John can attest to this as well, but healthcare organizations have to manage. So we looked at two really buckets of clients. So clients with bed size of 0 to 1,000, on average, they're managing 186 suppliers. And the max number of suppliers in that category of customers was 850 suppliers being managed. When you look at customers and healthcare organizations that have over 1,000 beds, average number of suppliers was 303, and the max was 936. Now we look at the average of all clients 231 on average and 893 on the max suppliers. So a lot of suppliers to be managed, and this is anywhere from the major manufacturers to small suppliers that are local, down the street from the hospital. So a lot of suppliers to be managed, small and large. So now, after laying out, the number of suppliers that have to be managed, what we've outlined here is some key pain points that healthcare organizations face. And, a lot of these issues are further emphasized by the fact that not only are these issues in general, but they're further emphasized by the fact that you're doing this with multiple suppliers, as mentioned on the prior slide. So on the left, the illustration there is meant to really outline the process that has to take place every single time a part is procured. So from the time that a part is identified and needed to the time that the invoice is reconciled, there's a lot of touch points, a lot of people involved in the process, a lot of different processes that take place, healthcare organization to healthcare organization, or even a lot of variance that takes place at each individual hospital within the same healthcare organization. So on the right, we've outlined some of the key pain points when you look at that process and when you look at the areas that our clients have communicated to us that they've experienced. So as far as the process goes, it's lengthy, it's manual. In many cases, our clients have told us that it's paper-based. So approvals are often done on paper, requisitions are often handed in on paper. Number two is pricing and lack of transparency. So a lot of data exists in the work order management system, a lot of data exists in the purchasing system, but a lot of times a lot of healthcare organizations have told us it's hard for them to get access to that data. And when they do get access, a lot of the data is messy. There's a lot of redundancy. GE Healthcare spelled 4 different ways in the system. Legacy part numbers, making it hard to really identify some of the trends you see by part number or by asset. Number 3 would be response time. So given the fact that a lot of the processes are manual, paper-based, it can create some lengthy response times. So John had shared with us, and he'll talk about it in a little bit, but some of the response time needed from the time that the engineer diagnoses the part to the time that the part is purchased, if there's too much time that spans between that time of requisition and the time of purchase, of course you're experiencing equipment downtime. And not having really great known ETAs on when that part will arrive. Accuracy, it becomes an issue for customers that we speak to. Inaccurate ordering reduces efficiency. Obviously, it creates rework. It also creates problematic invoicing, which comes back to clinical engineering, and they're asked to help reconcile that. So a lot of redundant work, unnecessary work. From a policy standpoint, it's difficult to implement an effective compliance policy when you're working with multiple suppliers. So when you have hundreds of suppliers that you're managing and you have specific policies that you're trying to follow, we find that many suppliers can often support the policies that you have in place. So again, it comes down to doing things on a more manual basis. And lastly, from an analytics perspective, the data that is really required to understand how suppliers are serving your organization, the quality in which you're receiving, savings that you're realizing or not realizing, and then overall spend trends. So having multiple suppliers that you're working with makes it a little bit more difficult to really pinpoint some of that. And I'll touch on why that is with some data here in a few minutes. So I talked a little bit about the process on the prior slide, but this is meant to more specifically illustrate the process that we've identified. So we've done some time studies with multiple health organizations across the country, and what we've found is from the time that a part need is identified to the time that that invoice is reconciled, it takes on average 85 minutes. So when you now take into account that you're dealing with multiple suppliers that you may not have great connectivity with, or they may have very specific processes that you have to follow, that time frame can really extend beyond 85 minutes, but we find it's about 85 minutes on average. So it's a lot of time spent per order. And how can you mitigate that? Well, it's partnering with, really, it's partnering with suppliers and ensuring that they're able to follow the processes that you put in place in the organization and reducing that time as much as possible. So I'll hand it over to John at this point before I get into some of the data that we've identified, which really helps emphasize some of the issues that we see healthcare organizations face. But I'll hand it over to John to start, and John can share some of the specific areas that they've seen pain points relative to working with multiple suppliers.
Thank you, Erin. Many of you can relate to the rising operational costs and do more with less mentality that hospital administration has put on us on the front line, and that pressure to identify effective strategies to reduce spending. So after talking and hearing with many colleagues in the industry that consolidating vendors helps reduce expenses, save time for the clinical engineering departments, decided to follow suit. We began with what we thought was a easy process, assess the current suppliers, evaluate which ones are true business partners, and reduce the number down to a select few. However, we quickly learned the process of consolidating vendors and instituting a revised model by which to optimize them is pretty complex. It's really time consuming, and what we love to be is very tedious. So to overcome that challenge of vendor consolidation, we realized that the gains of improved partnership with our supplier base, my department invested in industry experts. We selected a third-party service provider who provided a vendor consolidation model. This way, we could use a model that was already proven to be successful and saved us a tremendous amount of time. So, going through the process of looking at how many vendors we had and trying to limit or bring in scope of who's providing us the best option is, it was pretty simple to see that where our true partners were and where we could take advantage of what Erin talked about is purchasing more, using that leverage of purchasing more from fewer people. So, Erin?
Perfect. Thanks, John.
Sure.
So now we'll walk through some data. This is really meant to, again, emphasize some of the issues that healthcare organizations face in managing multiple suppliers, and showing that it becomes even more complex given the landscape of the organization and some of the purchasing activity that we see. So to start, what we see as far as purchasing activity, we run analyses with multiple customers looking at purchasing activity that they have. We, of course, look at our own internal data as we've been in business for about 16 years now. But what we see is that, on an annual basis, our clients are purchasing a high volume of low-dollar orders. So, the significant time spent sourcing and procuring items under $1,000 is significant. So you see on the left here, we've really outlined orders under $500, orders under $1,000, and you see that really the majority of those purchases, the low-dollar purchase really make up the majority of the activity. Secondly, it's a significant volume of infrequent purchases. So not only are the purchases low dollar, they're also infrequent. So many times what we have seen through our spend analyses is that for clients as a whole, 53% of orders that are placed are for parts that are purchased once per year. So now you take into account that that product is purchased once per year. You're also using some suppliers only once per year. And feedback from the providers that we work with is that it's a very, very difficult process in getting suppliers added. Many suppliers have to be added because the part needs to be procured. But again, you're using these vendors one-off. And again, that's because there's a lot of one-off purchasing that takes place. So you see on the table on the left, the percent of total orders. So one-time purchases being 53%, 2 to 3 units being purchased per year, 26%, and 4 to 6, only 11%. So again, there's this long tail of suppliers that have to be utilized, and it makes it really difficult to manage. Not only are you working with multiple suppliers, but there's distributed purchasing decisions. So a lot of the purchasing is initiated by clinical engineering and often managed, by clinical engineering, depending on the purchasing process that takes place. But there's a lot of folks involved in the process of parts procurement. And when you're, again, working with multiple suppliers and there's multiple stakeholders here, it definitely emphasizes the fact that it's very difficult to manage. So as you look at the various folks that are involved, really having a great understanding and alignment around the suppliers that are utilized and why makes it very difficult to control. As we look at our clients' data, one of the things that we do is we also provide some insights on purchasing activity, inconsistencies that we see, because really the goal is to be focused on continuous improvement and where we can help provide insight on continuous improvement and really what our industry has been focused on. So when you look at purchasing activity within the healthcare organization, what we saw is that there are a lot of healthcare organizations that are purchasing the same part from the same supplier at varying price points. And then you also see, even more frequently, is the same part being purchased from multiple suppliers at varying price points. So the outcomes that you get are, again, varying price points, but secondly, you're also getting varying quality, service levels, etc. And that really comes down to, from feedback from our customers, is that they don't have a great system in place in order to structure and automate the suppliers that are being purchased from. They may have it in place, and it's infrequent that we hear that from customers, but they may have it in place for their high volume purchases, but when it comes down to parts that are purchased a little less frequently, there's not great systems in place in order to ensure that consistent suppliers are used. And again, to ensure that you're getting the outcomes of consistent pricing and consistent quality, and lastly, consistent service levels. When you're dealing with multiple suppliers, the other thing that we've, again, heard from our customers is, some instances of fraud. So it exists in our industry. We all know that it does. I was definitely surprised to hear how much it happens as we talk to customers and hear about some of the experiences that they've had. So fraudulent activity obviously becomes a little more difficult to manage when you're dealing with a lot of different suppliers. So what we've provided here is a case study that outlines some fraudulent activity that took place. And again, as a result of purchasing from a lot of different suppliers, again, it makes it difficult to see specific trends on specific assets, specific trends by specific users, etc. So in this case study, it was a current employee of the healthcare organization. The instance was some expensive imaging parts They were purchasing the imaging products outright when an exchange was available. So this is a report that we create and provide to our customers, but a lot of our customers look at this data on their own in order to help, mitigate fraudulent activity. But what we saw was that there were a high volume of high-dollar imaging parts that were being purchased, refurbished outright. And they were products that really could have been purchased on exchange. So as we went over the report with the director really saw 3 items on the list that should have been purchased on exchange. As they started to dig into it, they realized that there was something probably fishy going on. And what was happening was the employee was keeping the core unit, not returning the exchange, and they had multiple ad bills coming in from multiple suppliers across the board, and that was for non-return of core. They ended up finding the issue months down the line, but they had already been exposed to a lot of fraud and ad bills now from the suppliers given the activity. But again, it was difficult for them to identify that beforehand, before doing business with, consolidated group of vendors, because it was widespread and it was across so many different suppliers. So now that we've laid out some of the data, case studies that we've seen from working with clients and working with the data that we've been provided, there are better outcomes through vendor consolidation, and that's really the moral of the story. So I'll hand it back over to John to talk to how they at OhioHealth went through the consolidation of vendors in order to achieve better outcomes.
Thanks, Erin. So, like everybody, looking for those, golden nuggets that we can say, hey, here's where we can save, and this is, trying to find that sometimes a needle in the haystack, but sometimes it's staring you right in the face, and different people look at different things, and we're looking for better outcomes through the vendor consolidation. Of course, cost savings is always on the mind. Improving the visibility to spend and to show that where those outcomes are, it really helps having that transparency so that you can, up to management and out to the customers at the, if you're doing QBRs with the departments, you can show, this is where we were, this is what we were doing, and now that we've consolidated, we can show how much better we are. The time savings, that one's always been difficult to quantify, but PartsSource has the means to help you with that, showing you how to quantify, people's times and, the research and all that. So that really was an eye-opener for many people within OhioHealth. Reduce procurement and supply management costs. That's huge for OhioHealth. I think our cost to create and the internal costs to create and go through the PO process and reconcile it is, I think, about $1,100 is what I was told. So if you're doing multiple parts, multiple vendors, going with one source that we have a standing PO or a open PO that we can use, and we only have to reconcile it once a month or once a quarter. It reduces that transaction cost tremendously. And with what Erin was just saying about fraud mitigation, it does the reporting really does lend to the ability to have visibility to those one-offs or those, something's trending in the wrong way, and you need to take a look at it. So putting those things together really has helped us reduce our overall cost. It's really helped actually the technicians and the engineers' ability to work on the equipment and not have to chase to get a PO, not have to chase to get that part sent back. It's so much simpler when you partner with somebody and they can help you, teach you, and truly partner with you to get your parts that processing time and cost down. So I know at one point in our CMMS, I think we had 1,300 different vendors that we could choose from. So reducing it down, I mean, nobody's going to have all the parts that is needed. So, but reducing it down truly helps the bottom line. So, and when it comes down to that transparency, so that you can shine not only for our management but also for our customers, it really puts faith in what we're doing is the right thing. So, anything else, Erin?
Perfect. No, I think, John, you gave an example earlier today, a specific example, small things like, through supplier consolidation, you can use and leverage blanket POs. So I know, some of the issues that many healthcare organizations experience is the time between that requisition, being executed and the time that the actual purchase takes place, with purchasing. So limiting, and we've heard this from other healthcare organizations as well, having a limited number of vendors where you can have blanket POs with does help reduce that time if you do run into that issue, at your specific hospital. So I thought that was a good example that you brought up earlier today.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many times that you're fighting that time window to get the parts shipped, and if creating a PO, waiting to get that PO number back is part of that equation, that reduces the troubleshooting time to ensure that you're ordering the correct part. So
perfect. So in closing, we have contact information here for both John and myself if you have any specific questions or inquiries you want to follow up on. So I'll leave that up on the page, and from here I think we were going to be opening up for questions.
Exactly, Erin. And we have a couple of questions that came in during the presentation, but I do want to take a moment to remind all of the attendees that they still have ample opportunity to submit questions for this Q&A portion. You can do so using the question feature on your dashboard, or you can do so using the chat feature. But let's get started with the first question. Erin, I'll pose these to you, but John, feel welcome to chime in. First question is, I'm interested in vendor consolidation, but we're currently under contract with a few vendors. What are the options?
Well, as far as vendor consolidation, I can answer it obviously from our standpoint. We have many programs with many customers that are, there really isn't any customer that we work with specifically that doesn't have a contract in place with somebody. So really what we do up front is understand where those contracts exist, and then we lay out the scope of what makes sense to consolidate with PartsSource specifically, and carve out those specific contracts and then provide our customers with visibility on, based on what's in scope, we can provide you X savings and Y time savings. We also give you some time savings information, along with a list of services that we can also provide based on the level of engagement. So I can answer it from our standpoint, of course, but it's really, part of the process, and we've talked about this with on a previous webinar as well, but part of the process is, assessing where your contracts exist, of course, and then through a process with us specifically, it would just be understanding those and then identifying the scope and providing back to you what I just mentioned.
All right, next question. How long does it take to consolidate vendors?
John, I'll defer to you on this one, but the only thing I will mention is, through the process I just mentioned, that's a good segue question, but through the process I just mentioned, when we engage with clients and we understand, what their goals are, what contracts they have in place, really from start to finish, it's a very short window, less than 30 days that we can put in place a proposal that helps you, get from the hundreds of suppliers that you're working with to a consolidated version of that. And again, the time window is usually a max of 30 days from the start of that process to the implementation. But John, I'll defer to you if you have anything you want to add there based on your experience.
So sure, a lot of what you're consolidating is, depends on how good your CMMS data is. Where are you buying? Where are you purchasing things? And trying to look at that big scope of how do we reduce and who are the ones that we have to buy through. So for us, our CMMS was kind of dirty and messy, so I think it was right at about a month that it took to get our data in line with where we were at and where we wanted to go. So, and the tools that that we worked with PartsSource with was tremendous and eye-opening, and it really, once you're in it, it goes by quick, but while you're swimming upstream, it shows a lot of messy where we were, and now where we are is a lot better place.
Great. The next question is, do you have an average on what customers save when they consolidate vendors?
With us, it really depends on the product mix, so and the program that we put in place. So if we're looking at a consolidation program, on biomedical products, we see it range anywhere from 5 to 15%, and when we look at imaging products being brought into the fold, that number can double. It really depends on the product mix that we're looking at, but again, there's an assessment process that we take and provide the client with their specific savings that we can help them realize through a consolidated program.
And I know our numbers, I think we're right around 300,000 that we were able to save in the first 6 months. So, that lower average shipping costs, using that buying power really did have quantifiable numbers that really does help the bottom line.
All right, another question. How do you effectively or efficiently find the more competitive price or quotes for items or services covered by many vendors?
I can speak to how we specifically do it, of course, and then I've got a little bit of feedback on what I've seen other clients do as well. So at our organization, we have a team of folks that manages our catalog of products. So we keep on file all of the legacy part numbers that have been associated with a given part number and manufacturer combination. And then we, from there, identify all the different conditions that are available on the market, from OEM original, refurbished, new, non-OEM, or OEM replacement, whatever you'd like to call it. And then we keep that saved within our catalog, which is then available to our clients online. I have seen, and I don't think a lot of healthcare organizations use it as frequently as maybe others do, but some do say that they capture some of that information in their item masters, either through their purchasing system or their CMMS. But I do know, some of the feedback there is that, sometimes it's difficult to have multiple conditions tied to a specific part loaded into that item master. But that's some of the feedback I've gotten from clients on how they've managed it internally.
All right, I have another attendee question here. Managing dialysis treatment supply inventory and the vendors associated with it is a challenge. Are there decent mobile-based inventory supply chain programs that are cost-effective for the smaller companies? This would enable me to order products and parts on the go and be a major time saver. What are your thoughts?
That's a great question. As far as inventory for dialysis parts specifically, I know that there are, the one thing that we can provide, I'll speak to that first and then I'll go into, what might be out there and available, with other organizations is, from our standpoint, we do try to provide some insights and visibility into products that might be of benefit to inventory. So we'll provide as part of our reporting, hey, the healthcare organization purchased this product 6 times this month at a quantity of 50. This might be something that you should consolidate your ordering on, save on shipping, obviously save hard costs on the consolidation of ordering and bulk purchasing. But as far as the inventory management specifically, I know that there are features within the CMMS that allow you to manage that effectively. And I do know there are some, if the organization is smaller and not, open to investing in that, I know that there are some, other systems that are more cost effective that can help manage that inventory. I don't know any off the top of my head, but that's one that I can take, Jamie, and see if I have any feedback from others in the organization, and we can provide back to you guys.
All right, Erin, the attendee who asked that question has a follow-up to it. The vendor that I am aware of are the OEM only. Most of my parts orders are as needed. Whenever there is a repair necessary, I can only fit so many parts in our service vehicles.
Okay, perfect. So, and we see that probably more commonly where people are buying, as needed, as opposed to inventorying parts because they don't necessarily want to carry the cost of the inventory. Depending on the product, we do business with many dialysis suppliers, so I'd be happy to have somebody follow up with that person if they're interested in seeing what we can provide. One of the things that we do provide, regardless of the supplier that we're purchasing from, is we give you insight through our mobile application and our web-based application on when a product would be able to ship and what the lead time is, and then that gives you, better visibility into how it should be shipped. If it's something that you need, by next Monday, There's a 2-day lead time. It gives you the ability, obviously, to manage that appropriately without having to inventory the part and have it on hand. But I'd be happy to follow up with ours or with somebody specifically on that if they're interested.
Absolutely. I'll be sure to provide the contact information for this attendee to you. And that gets us through the questions that were submitted for the Q&A. So I want to take some time quickly and thank John and Erin for the information that you shared today, as well as the wisdom. And thanks again to today's sponsor, PartsSource. You can learn more about this company by visiting their website, PartsSource.com. One lucky attendee will win an Amazon gift card for completing today's post-webinar survey. The survey will appear on your screen shortly. You must complete the survey to obtain your certificate of attendance. And if you do not see the survey, please email us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We do have webinars scheduled weekly through the next month. You can see a complete calendar and free registration options at the number 1 technation.com. Again, that's 1technation.com/webinars. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.